Start recording for our webinar, which is all about telling the story of the power of events during the UN Year of Sustainable Tourism. So welcome everybody to the webinar. Apologies for the noise in the background. Obviously typical timing that roadworks have started outside our office in Manchester as we're talking. So the goal of today's webinar is to tell you about our campaign, to tell you how you can be involved, but also to explore some of the findings. My name is Fiona Pelham. I am Managing Director of Positive Impact. We're a not-for-profit that has set up to create a sustainable event industry, and we provide education and collaboration opportunities to enable that. And what we're talking about today is a really good example of that. I'm very happy to be joined by a panel of two of our sponsors for our year, from Reed Exhibitions and IBTM World, Graham, and from Palm Springs, Vicki, and also joined by two of the academics who have contributed to the report. And without their input, this wouldn't be able to be done. So I'm very happy to include Thomas and Kate on today's webinar. So first of all, I wanted to start off by telling you a bit of context about the work that Positive Impact have been doing during the UN Year of Sustainable Tourism. At the start of this year, the UN set themselves some goals and objectives. So we reached out to UNWTO and said, we would like to mirror the work that you are doing for the event industry. And we also set some goals and objectives. And our goals were that we would gather a community of 1,000 people to be collaborating to create a sustainable event industry. We would share over 2 million education opportunities. We would collect over 2 million examples of best practices for sustainability, and we would create a research report that would inspire change. What we're going to be talking about today is the research report, which we're actually calling a commentary. About a month ago, the UNWTO launched their own commentary to look at sustainability within the tourism sector. And we mirrored that commentary and created a piece of work which will be officially launched on the 1st of September. Now, when this commentary goes out, our goal is that the event industry will read it and also provide their input and their ideas. And I will tell you more about that at the end of today's webinar. But first of all, I wanted to start by welcoming our panel and starting off with Graham. Obviously, we really appreciate the support that you've given us because it's made this commentary possible. But Graham, could you tell us a bit more about why you wanted to support an initiative like this?
Sure, thank you, Fiona, and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the webinar. So, I'm talking on behalf of Reed Exhibitions, Reed Travel Exhibitions, and of course the IBTM Events portfolio. And this isn't the first time that we've got involved in supporting an initiative through the UNWTO. 15 years or so ago, Reed Exhibitions, along with ICA and MPI, the foundation partners of the Tourism Satellite Accounting Programme, which over that the last 15 years has gone on to do some major work and has given a framework for the study of the economic impact of meetings and events around the world. So when we were approached to look at this whole area of sustainability, knowing that it was for an exceptionally good program backed by the UNWTO, we just felt that we had to get involved. Reed Exhibitions are a huge consumer of goods and services. We, as some of you may know, we're the largest events organizer worldwide. We run 530 exhibitions and events around the world every year across 30 countries, bringing together 7 million participants. So not only are we a huge consumer of product, we also have a great platform to, I guess, further promote, educate the global industry participants of ours across all of our shows about sustainability, particularly in the world of events. So we're delighted to be involved in this program. From the commentary that I've seen, there's some really fascinating work that's come out of that, and I think it's a real credit to Positive Impact for literally picking up the baton and being grabbing hold of this opportunity and bringing us all together. So we're delighted to be involved, and I hope that the findings that come out of this can be the start of a much broader campaign that really does set a pathway for change for our industry. So looking forward to the webinar, but also looking forward to being fully engaged and involved in the rest of the program and continuing this post the end of the year and much further on into the future.
That's great. That's great. Thanks, Graham. And a good point made there that actually the final report, when we've had the input from the industry, will be discussed and launched at IBTM World in the next few months. So I'd now like to introduce Vicki, who is on the webinar all the way from Palm Springs, so is up quite early for this webinar. But Vicki, can you tell us a bit more about why you wanted to be involved in this initiative?
Well, thank you, Graham, actually, as well. Thank you so much for creating this opportunity. As a destination, Greater Palm Springs is very interested in sustainable events and meetings. Greater Palm Springs as a whole has one of the largest solar fields and wind farms in the state of California, and with over 300 days of sun, we have a great use for the solar fields to create energy efficiencies. We do a lot with water conservation. We have a lot of public transportation that's energy efficient, including a Tesla program with Tesloop, taking people to and from the beach cities and a few other cities. So we're very interested as an entire destination, as well as with our hotel properties and many of one of the properties in North America, the Two Bunch Palms is one of the first carbon neutral properties in the entire state of California, or in the entire North America, actually. And so we're really interested as a destination to be very forward thinking about sustainability, how we can do sustainable events, how we can work with our event planners like Coachella that's based here, and all of our other event and meeting planners to bring in sustainable events and help do things that are good for our earth and good for our communities. So we just really were very impressed with the reports. We were very interested in the relevant information that could provide opportunities for the meeting and event planners to take action right away to do things that are sustainable, and we want to help in that effort. So we were very honored and excited to have the opportunity to be part of this, to be part of the webinar, to just share our enthusiasm for the report and to be part of this commentary.
Fantastic. Thank you, Vicki. And it's great to have both Hugh and Graham involved. And for us on our side, we wanted to collaborate with people who were walking the talk already. And I think what's been great about what you've both shared is understanding the role of a change maker that you both have and the role of influencing that you both have. So we look forward to more collaboration there. Now, for all of you listening to the webinar who may be thinking, you've mentioned this commentary and I haven't seen it and I haven't read it, don't worry, because it hasn't officially launched yet. So what we're talking about on today's webinar is more the background of why we decided to create this commentary. We will be contacting you after the webinar and giving you a link so that you can register your interest to receive the final commentary, and that will launch on the 1st of September, and then you'll have a few months to give your input. So part of the commentary, we talk about some key definitions, and then we look at taking 5 of the Sustainable Development Goals. The United Nations has 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and these are goals that create a roadmap for a world that will work for everybody. So they include everything from gender equality to zero hunger. And we asked 5 academics to be involved in giving a short commentary on how the event industry could help move us towards solving these goals. So I'm now going to ask 2 of the academics that were involved in that to tell us a little bit about the goal they wrote about and what they identified within their findings. So Thomas, would you like to share about the approach that you took?
Yeah, I think it's, to start with, I think it's important to say that we were, Suzanne Dowes and I, Suzanne's at Canterbury Christchurch, we're thrilled to be part of this on the basis that academia and academics have a tendency to talk amongst ourselves, and that we, things like this provide us with a good opportunity to actually share our ideas and actually promote change in the ideas, with the ideas that we have, and to actually have a captive audience that's not just students, but people who are actually working in the industry and working towards change as well. So I think it's important that you know, that there are these kind of collaborative efforts. I mean, Suzanne and I were concerned predominantly with around the role of events in building sustainable communities, particularly in terms of host communities. And we were looking particularly in the context of developing nations and I suppose developing regions, developing communities, and how over the probably the last 2 decades, and certainly into the future, we're looking at more developing nations hosting, in particularly more global mega events, and particularly in the context of sport, which is where this particular piece of research came out of. And you know, the catalyst for it was Suzanne's PhD, which was based around the Football World Cup in South Africa, the Men's Football World Cup in South Africa in 2010. And looking towards how we can build sustainable communities through these events. The rhetoric is that, you know, events provide regeneration, etc., etc. You know, are good for capacity building and all that, and all this, that, and the other. And one of the questions that we had really was, you know, where does that potential come from, and what are the limits to that potential particularly in the context of sports events? You know, we know from media reports and things like that sports events are often available to the highest bidder, and that actually the people who are organising the events don't necessarily have the community's best interests at heart. And so we approached it from a kind of social justice point of view to say, well, actually these events can have can promote positive change, and it's important that they do, because that is what they are there to do. You know, yes, they are there to make money, yes, they are there to captivate an audience, but ultimately, when we talk about, particularly in the context of mega events, we're talking about building communities and leaving a sustainable legacy, in terms of whether that be infrastructure that provides jobs, whether it be in terms of hotels, whether it you know, all manner of things. But we approached on the basis that these are questionable. Often the ethics behind event hosting are questionable. That because they are, you know, it's about making money, that often the communities are left behind. And so we kind of asked the question, say, well, whose responsibility does this lie with, you know, in terms of building these sustainable communities? Once the event has gone, you know, how do we ensure that the event has its, you know, I suppose, the best positive impact?
That's great. Thank you, Thomas. I think a couple of people have read this report so far. One of the pieces of work we've been doing is sharing the report with event industry associations and asking for their input and their support, sharing it wider. And one of the people that read the report read your section and said how interested they were with the fact that, you know, events bring people together, and that's how we're going to create peace and world change and legacy. So when you think of the number of events that there are that happen around the world, there are all these opportunities for peace and justice that happen daily. Did you write anything controversial in your commentary, Thomas, or do you think you were able to build the case for the event industry providing a legacy of peaceful connections between people?
I think that Suzanne and I took the approach that events have the potential to do these things, and some events do them better than others. In terms of it being controversial, we obviously would hold back in that it's difficult. Well, you can't point fingers a lot of the time in terms of sports governing bodies, let's say. So you look at an organisation like FIFA. Who are we to turn around and say that FIFA are a dreadful organisation that don't care about the communities that host their events? Although I think the vast majority of people probably would say yes, that is in fact the case. I think the key for us really is to say, well, in terms of peace building, in terms of, you know, peace and reconciliation and that type of thing, the question is who's, you know, where is that on the priority list? At the end of the day, most events are owned by somebody, you know, so they're owned by a governing body or something like that. And so if events truly are going to make a difference, there has to be commitment from the people who effectively own the rights to those events. Yes, you know, a host city or a region may have all sorts of wonderful plans in place, but those plans are highly reliant on a commitment equally from the people and the organisation that they're hosting on behalf of to support those goals, because ultimately, the pressure from the governing body is to deliver an event, and what happens after the event is largely not their concern. And so Suzanne and I would argue that actually, yes, it should be their concern, that because they award events on the basis that they will create X, Y, and Z along the way. And so we would say, well, actually, the organisers ought to be held accountable for delivering that. But ultimately, that accountability lies with, a governing body holding you to it, because who else is there? And so, yes, events have the potential, but it relies a great deal on commitment from people outside of the organisers, and certainly in the long term to actually make good on those promises.
I think this is one opportunity that we have with this commentary, actually, to show how the work the event industry does can align with the Sustainable Development Goals and therefore shift the focus slightly. So I think maybe previously people would have bid for events because of the economic impact, but when you look at the other social impacts and environmental impacts that the events can have, this may shift the focus. So I'm interested in seeing if the commentary inspires people to think slightly differently. And I know that you wrote about sport events, but this is equally relevant for business events and cultural events as well. So thanks for that, Thomas. I'm now going to hand over to Kate, and Kate, ask you the same question. Why did you want to be involved in this commentary, and what were your findings?
Thank you, Fiona. So as the other panellists have said, really, I just think this is a really important initiative, is that we start to gather evidence and start to think about what the events industry is doing, and importantly, what it can do more of in order to reach these kind of wider social, economic, environmental and cultural goals. And for me, the aspect that I contributed on was the UN's 5th Sustainable Development Goal, which is about gender equality. And this is an area that I've done some research on recently, and I approached it from two main ways, really, in which I think events can make a difference. So events themselves, so the bringing together of people, I think can help to promote ideas, educate people. So we've seen that in relation to the women's marches that we had earlier this year, to the recent Pride events that have been going on around the world as well. We can see the power of getting people together to try to, educate people, to try to increase understanding. But the second area I think the events industry can make a big contribution on this goal is in relation to seeing this as a place of work. So as a lecturer in events management, we find in the UK, and I think this is repeated in most other countries where it is studied, is that the majority of our students are female. So about 80%, some years it's higher than that, are female. So we've got a lot of women interested in this sector, going to work in this sector. And I think that raises lots of opportunities for thinking about how women in the workplace can really have more of a voice. We can have more strong role models and things like that. So in the events industry, the research I've done is UK based, but it'd be interesting to think about this in a more global way as well. As I say, we see a lot of women coming into the industry. There are some who make it up to the top, but not as many as we might expect proportionately. So events is a good sector to work in, it seems, for women. There are opportunities there. However, there are still some barriers there for women getting right to the top. So some of the research I've done is looking at kind of initiatives that are being done to try to address some of these barriers that persist. Things like mentoring programs for women. And a study that I've done recently into a specific women-only event mentoring program shows that these kind of initiatives can make a real difference. So by giving women this kind of targeted support, we can increase self-confidence, improve their abilities at networking and to get more out of networking, and also help with people kind of planning their careers and really aiming higher. So I think there's lots of other things that can be done as well, but I think the events industry appears to be receptive to these ideas of thinking, what can we do to promote greater equality on gender issues and other areas as well. So we're having increasing conversations at events like MPI and other things like that about what we can do to improve gender equality, and I think this is something we could certainly get more evidence on, certainly develop further, and that's really what my commentary is based on.
Great, thank you, Kate. When we have taken the academics' comments, we have also worked on providing some methodology and estimations. So with Kate's piece, we looked at how many jobs there were within the UK events industry, and we looked at the data Kate gave us that 80% of event industry students in the UK are women. So we were able to say, you know, if you take 80% of those future jobs, that's a significant number of women in the industry. And like you say, Kate, I think it's an industry that's interested in change and empowering female leadership. So our goal with doing that was really to say, look, this methodology isn't perfect, and it would take a lot of data and a lot of funding to have perfect data about each of these goals. But let's just imagine if we took this existing data and we used some common sense assumptions, this is the difference that could be made. So I think your contribution will make a difference there, Kate. What do you think needs to change within the event industry, or what are you hoping people will feed back around your commentary?
Yeah, I think one of the big challenges probably facing everybody in the industry appears to be things around work-life balance and around the kind of experience of working in the industry. I think that may be now that the industry is becoming increasingly professionalised, increasingly global. There's more opportunities for flexible working, which could help primarily women, but it would help everybody to be able to stay engaged in the industry throughout all stages of their life, and therefore we could kind of tap into the potential that's there. So I think flexible working is something that would be important. I think it would be it's also interesting to think about what other initiatives employers can do to support different groups and different individuals within their organisations. As I said, I think mentoring has been shown in my research to be very effective. There's lots of other things I think employers can do as well, so it would be interesting to hear if anybody who responds on the commentary has any other examples of things that their organisations have done that have been effective.
Fantastic, thank you, Kate. And while you were talking, we just had a comment posted, which we'll share with everybody, about a questionnaire that's been put out by the Global Sustainable Tourism Council on meetings and incentives, conference and events business. So we'll share that information. It would be good to see what collaboration we could have with the two pieces of research there. So people who are attending the webinar, if you have any questions, you are able to type into a box, and we would be very happy to answer those questions. At this point, I want to give you a little bit more information on the commentary and the launch, and make sure that you know how you can get involved as well. So there are a number of opportunities as well as this commentary. We would love you to be involved as an ambassador within our campaign to create a more sustainable event industry. So our ambassador program is to encourage people to just put their hand up and be in action around sustainability. Anybody can be an ambassador. It can be anyone who's a student all the way through to someone who's a CEO of the business. And we support our ambassadors by providing them with information, PowerPoints, all sorts of resources so that they can get their own community moving. The other thing that we would like you to be involved with is sharing examples of sustainability within an event. So in the last year, we've asked people to take pictures of events that they've been to where they've seen good environmental impacts, social impacts, or economic impacts, and just hashtag share a positive impact so that we can track it. One of our goals is to create a library of examples, because the event industry is very passionate about having checklist approaches and being told the right thing to do. And one of the things we're trying to do is explain that there is not one right way forward. Instead, there are many options of things that can be done, and actually sustainability is a way to be creative at an event. So we would love you to become an ambassador. We would love you to share a positive impact. But now I'll go back to telling you about the commentary. And the commentary will be available for launch on the 1st of September. We will take your details from this webinar and send you that commentary. We're going to be asking for questions to be completed by people across the industry. The questions we're asking for input around are: what action do you think the event industry could take to support the 17 Sustainable Development Goals? What are the barriers the industry is facing towards this action? What's the future event industry that you can imagine? And what examples of best practice, ideas of initiatives, or further comments do you have to share? So that's what we're going to be asking people from across the global event industry, sport, business, and cultural events. And we'll be creating our final report in November. So there are no questions from the attendees. So at this point, I'd like to turn over to our panel again. And as a closing comment, I'd love to hear from everybody. What's one thing that really interested you in the commentary? And Graham, if we can start with you.
I guess for me, I'll turn to the point about zero hunger. I've been in the events industry for 20-odd years, most of that working at Reed Exhibitions. And over that time, I've seen the amount of waste, particularly food waste, that has emerged from events grow, actually, rather than shrink. There are more events taking place. I think the requirements of event attendees is to be provided with the best, the highest quality, the most food, drink, whatever. And the amount of food waste that is thrown away is staggering, really. So for me and our organisation, if there's one thing that we can do is to say, well, look, okay, we need to ensure that our participants' experience is as good as possible, but how can we try and reduce the amount of waste, whether it's food waste or it's our customers, our exhibitors, for example, continuing to reduce the waste that they give out during our shows. How can we reduce that even more across the next 5 to 10 years? So there's a huge opportunity, I think, for us to do that.
Great, thanks, Graham. So you'd have enjoyed the piece in the report where we look at food waste measurements actually from the Danish MPI economic impact study, and then try and suggest how much food waste could be changed. Great. And then Vicki, what about you?
I am very interested because I'm very interested in a number of the aspects, but the research study to me, I thought provided a lot of really tangible benefits for the event planner. And I look at it from a destination perspective. And as I look at the different comments, whether it be from human rights, which I'm very interested in, our destination is a very LGBT-friendly destination, and it's something that's very important to our community to really include all. And one of the things that I think is so important is a way that we can use all the different pieces of the research report to share with our event organizers that are coming to our destination. How can we share with them how they can be more sustainable with food waste? How can we share with them how ideas on different ways that we can help our communities and be encouraging and involving with all different types of people? And I think that the report, to me, I thought was very impressive because it gave me something that I could lean on. It wasn't just me as a destination saying, hey, we have some ideas on how you can be more energy efficient or how you can do some things here to really be very sustainable in the practice, but it gives us as a destination an opportunity to say, this isn't only us, we're very interested in sustainable practices, and we want to bring your event here, we want to bring your meeting here, and we want to give you some ideas on ways that we can work together to collaborate and really leave a positive impact in our destination. And that's something that I thought was really a benefit that I got out and why I was so passionate about wanting to be involved in this, because there were a number of different things in the report that allows us to really work together with our event organizers, the very large events as well as the very small events, and provide them immediate ideas that they can make an impact in our community. And I was really impressed with the human rights aspect and the women equality aspect as well.
Great, thank you, Vicki. And actually that goes to a comment that Julie left on our comment board. I'm not sure if everyone can see it, but Julie Doofus was talking about the fact that, Vicki, just as you said, you as the destination will have partners, Julie was talking about the organisers need to also partner with the local governments to ensure that legacy happens. So I think hopefully this commentary will provide something for all those different partners to be able to work together to move forward on. So the time is up on our webinar, but if it's okay, I'm going to keep going for a couple more minutes so that we can hear a very quick minute from Thomas and Kate about what they found interesting in the commentary. So Thomas.
Yeah, thanks. I think in the opening few sentences, it talks about the ideas. It talks about the notions of collaborating, and also about the importance of education. I think that these are important in the sense that we have to different stakeholders, different people involved in these things need to talk. They need to communicate. I think we do tend to work in silos. We have our own sort of little interests, and we don't necessarily share good practice in terms of how do we maximize the potential of whether it be around food, whether it be around the workforce, whether it be around working with communities and communicating and things like that. I think that from our point of view, when I've spoken to Suzanne about this, and we talk about education, say it's important to educate people about the benefits of X, Y, and Z, and the need to do this, that, and the other. But at the same time, I think we have to take education a bit further. In that education is important to the point where you raise awareness of something, but then there's still no mechanism to ensure that that awareness turns into practice. So yes, I'm aware that I shouldn't eat 2 bags of Haribo a day, but it doesn't stop me from doing it. And so I think that I think there has to be a mechanism where we take education to actually prod people into positive action. So yes, they're aware of what they're doing, or they're aware of what they should do or what they shouldn't do, and that pieces of work like this can actually then say, well, how do I actually turn my awareness into something positive, or how do I alleviate some of those negative practices that perhaps we're engaged with at the moment.
Great, Thomas, and you hit the nail on the head with the word collaboration, because one of the challenges within the event industry is that there are so many different niche activities going on. So how can we collaborate to share best practice that we can all follow? So finally, Kate.
I think for me the big kind of takeaway message from it, after looking and reading everybody else's commentaries as well, is that yes, we know some things that are going on in the industry. We have some evidence, some data, but not enough. So I hope that this commentary and this report, when it goes out, is just the start. And I hope that we can continue these conversations, do more research, find out more things about that are really going on, what we need to do to. So I hope that this will really be a kind of a call to action for the industry to take these issues really seriously, and to think about how can we document what we are doing and think about what we can do better in the future.
Brilliant, thank you, Kate. So that brings a close to our webinar. I'm very looking forward to sharing with you all the commentary when it's launched. It's absolutely not perfect, it's just the start of this story. And over the next few months, we're very much looking forward to the event industry's input on that. There will be another webinar this time next month going into a bit more detail on the commentary. But thank you for joining us. And panel, thank you for your contributions. Thank you, Vicki, Graham, Thomas, and Kate.
Thank you.
Pleasure.